can get rolling against you. Of course, that's not as easy as you'd like because things like the Zillion can prevent soul pickups, which can make things a little bit tricky. But I feel like there's pretty good answers in every lane right now for DFM. You said the Misfortune's Desire is a bit nasty for the Zaya. Akali into Nara is something that Ebby has pulled out a few times before.
Number of
yes,
times, yep.
you can kind of trade into the Shroud if you're playing the Boomerangs, right? But it's not that easy. You've got a lot of area control with the Veigar, and that makes things quite tricky, honestly, for Sengoku.
However, I think as we get into game, we're going to look towards bot side. We know that Paz actually, just as and actually this is for me is more about Sengoku as an identity of a team. Paz wants to nullify lane. Once will be a bit of a firecracker. He'll do some stuff in the early game, but most of the time, he's looking to set up bot lane. And if Honey and if NT don't have a good laning phase in a 2v2, which I think they're really going to struggle in, I think Sengoku are going to have a lot of problems. Again, I think Sengoku need to tip the scales early on, because if you're sat there getting 90% slowed by the Zillion into a bullet time, both of these bot laners from Sengoku are going to shred. I don't think they can stand and fight a 2v2.
A little couple things to call out here, of course, is the Akali with the Ignite, not the Flash. It's a pretty standard thing for top lane when Akali was pretty more common, say, last MSI, when Ebby was really
also playing
at
that top lane, yes.
Indeed, he did. He used to play into the likes of Khan and did quite well with that kind of ability. Alongside the Urgot, of course, we got a number of solo kills there against the Korean first seed at that time. Of course, slightly different meta, slightly different stats on the champions as they stand. Everything else feels relatively standard. It's the Spellbug for Veigar, but again, that's not exactly a surprise. And dematerializes in that lane as well to try and help out some of that control.
Well, particularly when Veigar is often about how quickly can you one-tap the back minions with your Q to start stacking earlier to actually get some priority, because Veigar does not get priority until very late for a mid laner, right? You need to get to level 6, 7, well, level 7, 8, when you get like 3 or 4 points into your Q to really start having the ability to take things out. I actually really like, by the way, the 2 games now. Yohong's taken bone plating into Ahri to trade more effectively level 1, where Ahri's electrocute W trades get really, really nasty. You can see that. That would actually be a third of the HP, not a fifth of it, if you hadn't taken that rune. It just allows you to play a little bit more close to the limit on waves 2 and 3.
Blitzcrank sound there, feeding us some numbers. Last game as well, you saw the AI power spike, and it was all DFM favored that time as well. It feels like it's this way again. See, of course, how it plays out in game. Stats really can very much lie. As this combo between the make it rain into the bombs, which is so much easier to land afterwards. I'm already seeing it right now. That's just horrifying.
The huge point and click slow.
Yeah.
Rewind it to get it twice onto both members.
Yeah, you can see the combos there, pretty nasty. Of course, right now, though, at least before some levels come in, it is Sengoku who do have the lane shove right now. So could be some shenanigans that Sengoku get out early, especially with both junglers pathing towards this bot side. Turnaround damage, though, some of these bombs getting a little bit nasty.
This is the thing. All it takes later on is, doesn't matter if you're 100% HP, double bomb or a slow lands into the full combo between the two of these, and it's lights out at that point. However, we're not at that point yet. Sengoku actually have 3 pushing lanes, and they have an aggressive jungler. There is a chance for them to run over the early game. Use their jungler as a wrecking ball. But that's not something the LJL does as a region. If I'm gonna I'm not blind. I love this region. I've had some chance to craft some other regions. Even something like the LEC is not really that active early on unless your name is someone like Fnatic. That's one of the few that can go towards it. But this is not a region which particularly plays around early game. And we already talked about how that is going to affect this bot lane matchup.
Oh yeah, and you can see some of the numbers here as we've got a little bit of a blue invade going on, as well as Once is trying to ward Steel off away from his blue buff with the lane shove they have down bot lane. I'm glad that we are seeing a little bit more proactivity from Honey and Enti with this lane priority. It does mean that Steel is going to have to leave that blue buff for the Wolves, or at least the Viego at this point. He'll go towards his topside Scuttle Crab and deal with that instead. But Udapon, first in the KDA versus Honey, who's that second. You can see the golden damage percentage is pretty high, but not perfectly high, because honestly, both of these teams have got other carries to play around. They don't have to be funneled quite as much. They don't have to do quite as much work. But even so, those percentages lie a little bit, because the raw numbers are still bloody good in terms of the amount of gold, the amount of damage they're doing.
Well, I mean, halfway through last year, we realized that we were a Jinx Aphelios region. Guess what everyone started playing at the end of that season? We got there a little early. We had the carries who were already going towards that start. It's one of the few times I really felt like the LJL was ahead of the world meta. Sometimes we're a little slow to pick that up. Sometimes we
Jet
don't really do that.
In a spot of bother. He's going to be able to get out with the W there. I thought for a second Steel could get behind, but won't pop the ghost.
Sam, cool your jets. Calm down. not one to get excited about right now. And
I
on
thought
some
could
more
be some
important
cool
things.
stuff
I mean,
as I get memed on there with horrific puns.
I mean, it's still just looking for it's a time-wasting gag, right? Or rather, like, it's an overlap where you've got, like, one camp up, you're not really missing that much. And,
He's
Paz.
dead. He's gonna, actually has got to burn the flash, but not quite enough for another 5-point strike, but still flash blown. That will force the teleport out. The Ignite is on a significantly lower cooldown, I might add.
And how often have we seen Ebby do this over the years? He has so often just found that one trade to completely just completely turn the tune of a lane. You're sat there and thinking, oh my gosh, Ebby's just taking control again. This is going to be a bit of an awkward one. The question is, what can you do with this? Is this going to lead to an XP advantage? Does that mean that Ebby can start bullying out this lane even more? Does that mean DFM can take control of topside? Lots of follow-on effects can happen from opportunistic trades like that.
So I call out is here as well, because Unipon has gone for the Comet on the Misfortune. He's also gone for an early tier, so the damage isn't actually that high right now, but this is suggesting a lethality build, which into this comp I don't hate, especially considering you've got the double AP elsewhere.
He's always been a huge lethality MF player.
Oh, yeah.
He played it internationally last year, and
Those
I believe,
ults hurt.
remember that game that we sadly lost against 100
so
Thieves? That was a Misfortune game where he was one-shotting AD carries. You know, he's had some international tenure on this pick too. Of course, this is only the Juggernaut match. However, the winning this series.
It's
remember,
the same caliber. Look at the number. Look at these
that's
players.
the one. I mean, I am looking at these players and I'm looking at the minimap and I'm seeing a lot of people going towards the bot side jungle. See if Sengoku will look to pull the trigger there. But DFM, again, as much as we've talked a lot about them, Sengoku are looking to force DFM into a loss in a Juggernaut match for the third time, I want to say. They've lost 2 before this, one to Rascal Jester, one to Sengoku.
Yeah.
And then even if that does happen, you still gotta go to the finals and win finals to go internationally. The job's not done, not even close to it.
Okay, Yaharong will not get hit by the Spectrum Boy. Now, Freddy's going to turn it around. My days, that's a lot of damage. Ignite, is it going to be quite enough? I don't think so with the pot running, but that is 43 HP. That
was with the W just about missing 2. Once we said, hey, pushing lanes, early aggressive jungler. Maybe you can don't do that. You can do things in the early game, maybe not that.
Yeah, and again, this is the danger, right? It's like, you've got a slightly more defensive option. You really want to hit level 6 for the Misfortune and stuff, as Jet might now be an attempt. That's a really good cage. They don't quite have the damage. That's a good charm turnaround. A little more found aside from a decent chunk. It might force a reset away from Jet, though, who's going to go towards this blue buff, and I wonder whether that will leave Steel with an opportunity to think about something like that. Dragon,
has,
but
has
not
no
a
all. He has no mega.
Oh, he's being
has no flash.
away.
And again, you know that. Let's just revisit this again because it's good to kind of put down a thread and then pick it up later. Ebby took that great trade. Now has an XP advantage. Now gets to force Paz off the wave even more. This is how Ebby takes over games.
Absolutely, and remember, he's on over 1 solo kill a game, and he got very close already right now, and that ability to just zone people off, you can see he's going towards the Rift Maker, which makes a lot of sense when he's going to be side laning, looking for those continual trades. It is very concerning, I think, for Sengoku right now that, yes, Paz is doing okay, but it is a tricky state right now where with this Ignite, the Ignite up, rather, the Flash down. There we go, I'll get my Summoner spells the right way around. There is some serious kill threat, and the moment Steel hits level 6, which he's just done, by the by, some of these lanes become very much kill opportunities, assuming a good ultimate from a Hecarim or a good setup from the likes of Harp or Yaharon.
Well, the game is sadly not just about laning phase though for DFM, although they're pretty happy playing outside of that, but they might want to start playing outside of that for a Herald. Thing is, Jet saw Yaharong backing just before this, went back for an item completion, means that Vega is not in position to contest with this Herald. It's going to go down.
It is down now. Once needs to get out, but Steel's going to try and come in and look for an ultimate anyway. They're going to try and play this one out. Is there a Heartbreaker? There is not quite enough damage to ignite, but a big ultimate from the gods! Misfortune! It just destroys them all! Unipon, that was the most disgusting flash ult I think I have seen in a long time. I am speechless.
I mean, Chansapon just flashes over the wall into 4 people, flashes into the whole enemy team, and for the longest time, again, need we remind you, need we pile on the stories and the narratives, Utapon has been playing the facilitating role. Occasionally he's been called on to carry, but this split, he comes in and makes it... Boo! He makes it his own personal mission to say that he is still the best AD carry in this region. flashed it in the 5, gets the ult across the entire team of Sengoku. Send that one to Reddit.
Oh, I don't, Mats. You know, I enjoy watching Unipom when he's on form, and for whatever reason, against Sengoku this split again, he has been just phenomenal. And that is a lot of gold that's now onto DFM. Some of these lanes were looking okay, honestly, for Sengoku. You could see Jet with the range advantage, with a little bit of pressure coming in, was doing pretty well into this Veigar, which is not unsurprising necessarily, but doing pretty well with that, kind of orbit deception, the ability to dance around and avoid those cages. Great for him, but suddenly you've got 3 kills. First blood's gone to Unipon. You've got 3 assists onto this Hecarim. You've got a kill onto the Akali. You've got a kill onto this Veigar, who was caught on that reset a little bit, and that is now a very scary early game to deal with. Unipon's gone back and picked up his ever so popular first pick option onto his sort of like lethality AD cards. I believe that's
actually a Ghost Blade.
Wait, Ghost Blade. I thought it was going to be an Umbral Glaive, but it wasn't. It's the Ghost Blade. I saw it, I was like, wait, I'm wrong.
For those of you again that are kind of less in tune with some of the more niche things we talk about here. What less niche thing is ganking bot lane over and over when you've got a hyper carry there. But still, Youthbon loves picking up stuff like the Umbral Glaive, loves picking up kills in the bot lane too.
Gonna just die. There you go. Devastating charge is just enough, and fantastic if they get the summoner out as well, and Honey dies the first time this game.
It's so I'm not going to say generic. It's just it's another day at the office. It's easy. It's rudimentary. Just to sit there, it's like, okay, this is... Honey had no way to outplay that. Flashes out, loses that one. And carries of Jet and of Honey. And you cannot play around that. How do you sit under turret? And how do you get the gold onto these carries to actually fight effectively later into the game? Because DFM, we talked about LJL, again, not being an early game region. They don't care. They just outmuscle you. And even though it's not big, sweeping early game rotations, they can still just outplay you and force you down into the dirt.
Yes, they can. And now with this combo online, they've got themselves the lethality to back up, the early troughs of the tiers. This team is very much online, but I now need to turn my eyes over to Sengoku, who are down a hefty amount of gold, but they did get the Herald, which actually they didn't get to even get the eye. I'm not actually sure. Or maybe they've summoned it somewhere and I've just missed it. I think it must have gone down in mid by the looks of it, off screen.
We were still reeling from the... that's a very fast misfortune.
When she throws on the W, the strut, she can...
And then
she
also
can walk with the best of them.
Ghost Blade, and then also the Zillion ult. This is actually a thing, of course, which got nerfed about Misfortune way back in the past, where...
It was super strong.
You could get to rotate between plays so quickly. Yeah, now chuck a Zillion on top of that. That is so quick to get to the play.
Honestly, that was when you were seeing a little bit more crit Misfortune, when she didn't have the Ghost Blade. And honestly, Ghost Blade plus the W is probably just as fast as she was before the nerf, if not even quicker. You could probably just, time one, then the other, and be out on the map in a rapid turn of events. And that can make things a bit tricky. And with DFM in control of the map already, those rotations, the time you have to respond to them is going to be so much lower. And Honey's being forced away from this tower again. That's a second plate in bot side. And they're feeling very happy right now at DFM, and I need to see what Sengoku can do with some of their playmaking opportunities they do have, and some of the scaling opportunities they do have as well.
Oh, no!
Gets Misfortune ultimate. It'll be a decent pull back with the handshake. It'll be a cleansing trade from Unipon, but they're going to trade back onto Enti Unix. A massive hit.
Even though you're trading for the cleanse, you trade up in summoners, you've lost so much HP, you probably can't really fight around bot side for the next minute. You've got Mountain Dragon live too. And again, DFM, they're making plays on the right tempo, and they're finding the correct members to do it on soon.
Amazing stuff. We're out the cage, and then look for the ultimate, but where is once? Not around. So actually, they don't even burn the ultimate. They just take a trunk and try and force out some spells from the side of Jet. Won't quite get it, but they'll force him off for this wave a little bit more. And what have you got for me? I see you looking at something.
No, and again, it's just a continuation of the fact of, look, we saw what happened with Evie earlier, taking one good trade, finding ways to force Paz to play back and to play less aggressively on the top side earlier. They do the same bot, they do the same twice in a row
in trouble. So much damage, he's dead! Enti tried to flash for the bailout, couldn't get in range. The only thing he's being bailed out of is the ship that is sinking. Sengoku Gaming are being put to the sword again this game.
The ship's going down, but the train's leaving the station. All aboard the Detonation FocusMe hype train. We thought that they were in a rebuild year this year. They lost a couple of members, but if they're rebuilding, the only thing I can think that they're building right now is a damn space elevator. This team looks incredibly scary. It is only the second game in this series. It is only the Juggernaut match, not even the finals. Rascal Jesters will want to have an extra word with them, potentially Burning Core or Sengoku if they make it back to that point. but DFM continually upping the ante of what it means to be a top-tier Japanese team.
And let's be real, yes, we're being quite DFM focused, but that's because Sengoku have looked a bit headless. They've been caught out by plays like this, and once just gets turned into dust.
Because they're being like, their head is being forcibly removed by DetonatioN FocusMe.
It is a guillotine. It is literally an execution.
Well, let them eat. Well, I'm not sure if there's any cake left on this rift at this point. I think DFM have snatched all that up for themselves, and they haven't even had a death to their name in this game. They are clean across the board. They've lost some plates, but they haven't lost a tower. Remember, this is actually almost on track for a perfect game were it not for that earlier Herald.
That's pretty impressive. And now Ebby gonna continue going forwards, gets the flash out of Paz again. This guy just knows his mechanics on the Akali. Something he picked up last year. He's going to pick it up again. He's been flexing his mechanical muscles, his champion pool muscles this year, a lot more than we've seen over the last few years of play from this LJL GOAT top laner. But now the second Herald has spawned. Maybe Sengoku Gaming can finally find an angle, finally find a way to get back into this game.
But they can't find a way into the river at this point, because if you're fighting around this Herald, you see that choke point, which that 5-man ultimate came down in before. Well, yeah, try walking through that again. It ain't going to go any better for you.
There's some lethality in his epic inventory.
Has a lot more lethality, and look at this. Honey gets tagged by one slow. You pop all your Musu bonuses, and Honey just cannot stand and fight. This Zyra is meant to be someone that can actually sit and have people dive into them. What happens if there's still a screen away? What happens at that point? You don't actually have an ability to lock them down, and this is a continuation of the first game of Honey not being able to impact the game. Jet has had fine laning phases. That's one of the star carries for this team. Honey has been unable to impact things though, and DFM are just taking complete control of this.
It's a good cage. The Event Horizon will get a chunk out on once. Yaharong manages to get his way away from potential danger. Everfrost onto the wave into the Make It Rain means that Jet actually needs to back out. That wave just disappears so quickly at this point. They'll just take that one to the bank and back away. They've got the Herald. They prevent the mid push, and Nebby just about misses the Shuriken flip there. That had landed, you can see, definitely an option to try and get in onto that Gnar. All the while, though, Honey has been left to try and hold mid, and yes, it is the lethality Zai who has got a little bit more range to play around because you've got more damage out of those double daggers, but it's just not the same. And the problem is, the zone you have to walk into to start throwing that Q is the zone that is the Make It Rain, that is the double bomb, that is the Event Horizon.
And if you get tagged by one slow, you're going to get walked up into an auto-attack reset from the MF, and that's half your HP at least.
She's got cleanse, so even if you get the stun, she can just remove it and keep walking at you. You don't have the same trade pattern you want.
I'll remind you, it's a root, Sam. So
even if you get,
you're right. But what I mean is, even if you get the root, there's a chance another auto attack comes down. And that's still kind of terrifying.
What I was saying is that potentially a world where you root and get to walk away because the misfortune could follow. That is less easy now, especially with the comment stuff.
I don't think you're walking away because at that kind of speed, I mean, it's a limp, it's an amble, it's a quick trip back towards the grey screen mod. Once finds himself a scuttle, and he's lucky enough to get away with that. But while all this is happening, again, if you are going to characterize DFM as a team in this game and the last couple of games, is that they are outplaying so many micro situations that the macro can't really function from the other teams in the LJL. Remind it, this is a first versus second team matchup in the Juggernaut match. Sengoku, they ended out beating out the head-to-head on Rascal Jester, our other top team. And while DFM lost 2 of their games to Rascal Jester, this is another one of our real top echelon. But Sengoku are looking like a distant second to DFM in the first couple of games. They need to seriously start assessing what they're going to do coming into the rest of the games of this series, because while this game isn't over yet, it's about as good as about as close as you can say at the 18-minute mark.
It's over 5,000 gold. It's into honestly a bit of a comp discrepancy with the way you have to play around these objectives. It gets pretty damn scary. You've got a Drake spawning in 50 seconds, and I need to see whether Sengoku were willing to fight for it, because otherwise, I think it's going to get very dire very quickly here. That's the Eclipse in for the misfortune just in time, and you've got so much speed to get down there. It's just, I mean, what do you do? There's probably going to be a Muramana at some point in the future as well. It's just not necessary right now. And
it's the early spikes. It's the very early spikes, right? You know, MF has always worked on just raw stats. You have to start off with that tier. That's fine. But in DFM, if they had early humps in that early rather dips, I expect
Mm-hmm.
rather in their itemization, they've more than overcome it by this point.
The road is now very smooth. The sailing is smooth. NT, though, is in a lot of trouble. Gets charged back, but not quite over the wall because the wall was in the way. So his devastating charge is in the floor. Bit of a point there. Steel gets chunked out. That's not a bad chunk, but of course he's still got a healing pot, and I don't think NT has anywhere near as many ways to heal that up, especially when Steel steals the honey fruit.
But now we have a serious problem for Sengoku to pile on top of everything else, where you saw how many skill shots were thrown at Steel at that point. There is only one magic damage source on the enemy team, and it's Ari that's gone for Everfrost, Merc Treads, and then gone for the Banshee's Veil, or at least a component of it. Steel has only built itemization towards armor, towards physical damage, and does not care about your magic damage.
Okay, they get a charm, but I don't know how much that actually means. Takes a bit of a chunk out onto Steel. That is potentially good news, but now the Drake is starting up. Once has a Heartbreaker, has a Flash, could potentially come in, but it's going to be too little, too late, and they won't consider it. That will be DFM burning a teleport in trade, and just taking the dragon like that. It's an Infernal Rift. And 2 dragons DFM's name.
Yeah, an Infernal Rift is definitely not one that you want to see as Sengoku, but it can help them in one sense. There are less choke points now.
Yes.
Walls have been removed a little bit from that map, makes it a little harder for DFM to set up and say, can we get them into a very small area where they're eating all the skill shots, and the Veigar cage covers most of the area that they're walking through. Slight consolation, still behind in this game.
And lest I remind you, we had some predictions. We had a bit of a discussion for everyone, in fairness, did give the edge to DFM, but we said maybe a 3-1. I did mention that there was this potential that DFM just turn up and pub stomp. That we have seen the upper ceiling of this team, and it is pretty damn high, arguably higher than it was last season. We had hopes for Sengoku. We had hopes, still have hopes, for Rascal Jester, as teams that might offer us some competition. And we have yet to see, honestly, from Sengoku, the level required to challenge DFM right now, who look on another level, underline it a few times, and elevate it and stick it on a pedestal somewhere on Mount Olympus, because this is gods versus men right now.
Well, maybe we can hire SpaceX or something to, like, bring it to the top of the space elevator that they're building right here. Detonation FocusMe. They're looking to go, again, push up that extra ceiling of the LJL and say, look, we got ourselves a world group stage last year. Let's see if we can make that a continual streak, become a threat, become a team to be feared.
Speaking of fear, there's an onslaught is Shadow, and NT wants to left fear. Now Yahong's walking forward, trying to get a lot of damage down onto NT, who does throw down the hostile takeover. Everfrost comes down into a dark matter, the bailout's down, but he will just burn out. He is dead to rights. Jet has got the Banshee's Veil now, though, at least, so won't get picked off on the side as well, but that is a pick onto the support. Steel's still so fast.
It's Ebby.
With a rewind, there is Ebby. He could think about going in, but it's just going to be a devastating charge back towards the tower. Can Jet find anything at the back end of this? No. There's the cage. Banshee's Veil popped. That's all she wrote, but now this jungle is all's DFM. Honey takes a bit of a chunk. Steel gets chunked in trade, but I don't think that's that big a deal. 3-0-1 now on the Veigar.
But what's happening is that DFM don't mind taking a couple of chunks down because they can just head back into their own jungle camps, regen up, and it's just forcing Sengoku to play back. Ebby gets to encroach in the enemy jungle. If it's not Ebby, it's someone like Hop going on a bit of a mission to go and put some double bombs down into the equation too. Sengoku don't have a safe area of the map to play around. They're getting pushed in all lanes. They're losing a lot of their individual matchups, and they don't have any mode to play through besides a maybe a slight overextension from DFM. And even with that, you've got a zillion ult to worry about. Seriously, shut out, lights out for DFM.
Okay, out of the red buff and all the Krugs, Pav's got a small Krug. Every other one went to Ebby, including the red buff. That is, there's a little bit of tilt, there's a little bit of stat discrepancy, there's a little bit of ego checking there, but that is the kind of discrepancy we're seeing. It's the micro checks, it's the map checks, it's the comp checks, and honestly, it feels like DFM has been checking all of those in their favor.
They have, and there are some things, you know, in terms of the development of this team, things I want to see from DFM. I want to see if they can do this without a Hecarim. I think that's going to be a very important thing, because the Hecarim in the first 2 games has been absurd from Steel. Maybe you could do it with stuff like the Akali, though.
Gonna get a lot of damage. Can't quite get the kill. Will now be into the Twilight Strike, but gets the Ignite kill anyway. That's it 1v4, by the by. Make it 1v5. Ebby's still going. He's gonna try and get out of this. Might finally get traded out. Surely he does. That's now the 1-for-1. But now the rest of Sengoku burns so much to pick off Ebby. What happens here is Honey throws down the Feather Storm. Now they need to try and escape.
Oh, it's the ult!
Gets a massive onslaught of shadows into the cage, into the bullet. Time was far too short. 3-for-1. Ebby gets the 1v5 solo kill. The rest of DFM avenge his death in trade.
And they avenge it in such style. This is such an exciting team to watch. And you know, on broadcast, you have to play it a bit even. You have to say, you know what, you got to play both sides of the story because there are two teams in this game. But when you watch DFM play like this, when you watch Ebby play like this, it's so hard to not enjoy what they do. Ebby, for years, has been the solo kill king of the LJL, has the Ignite, and legitimately goes 1v5 to get a solo kill. Gets a huge chunk and a couple of ults and summoners at the end of this trade too. And while all this is happening, DFM go, well, okay then, I guess we'll come to help. This is the combo they have been looking for most of this game, and it is an absolute beauty.
Cage comes down, they're feared into the walls, run for the hills, tune up Iron Maiden, you got a bounty, but it comes in trade for your whole damn roster. 2 dead already, and Unipon picks up his third of the game, with the jungler and support dead, it's straight over to Baron and DFM. It is exquisite stuff from the best team in the LJL.
Yes, and again, the winner here goes on towards the LJL finals. Yet another one for DFM. They have not failed to reach that stage of a competition, unless you count the very first split in 2014 winter, which was a little bit of an odd one. But DFM are sat here now, again, showing that they are, again, the greatest Japanese League of Legends org of all time. And so many of those members have stayed with them throughout.
And it's the variety in play, it's the variety in champions, it's just the style in which they do it. Ebby's here with a rewind here to make it go in. They'll get a Mega Nora into the wall, it's a fairly decent chunk. He's got a revive though. They might finally die here. Will ult out, perfectly execute, pull back in. Nearly gets Jet as well, but it's not quite enough, and this time they go too deep.
It's a little too far, but still on the other side. DFM get the Baron. So it's a shutdown. Actually, I'm not sure if it was a shutdown.
It wasn't. He died
Death
before.
came in through that, but DFM, they lose one of their Baron buffs. They take away the Xayah ult, though, importantly. And what can you do without that? Because you can see the threat which DFM have still onto the Xayah, but still, I mean, it's not quite as clean maybe as DFM would have liked it to be. They went a little too deep. And again, this is the other side of DFM where occasionally, if not, their brains just checked out for a minute or two and they go, yeah, I could probably outplay that. And maybe they go a little bit too far, especially against your Rascal Justice, especially against your Sengoku. They do have the ability to punish you should you leave them the opportunity. But it's not a big enough of an opportunity to really come back in this game. Still 8k down in the dumpster, still losing
Keeping away
kills.
from that blast cone. Actually throw Steel over the wall. He's going to get narded for the wall, but it's a big misfortune on the trade. Flash over from Unibody. He's done that whole damn game. Can't quite secure the kills, though, as yet. It'll force 3 members of Sengoku out, though, at sub 1000 HP. Reminder now that Ebby's back on the pitch. They've still got a minute and a half of this Baron buff, but it has been slightly stymied because some of these plays haven't worked out quite in their favor. But now with the members backing, some of these towers are about to crack.
But this is the problem, right? I mean, DFM, they went for... I mean, we'll see if it ends up becoming a problem.
Jet!
my
Oh, Lord! I'm sorry you had to witness that, ladies, gentlemen, anyone of any other persuasion. I'm fairly certain we saw the kind of murder that gets, you know, an R rating on most late night TV shows. Once is about to find the same fate, it feels like. Another one comes down. It's nuclear explosions across the rift.
And, I mean, at this point, you're going to have a Fallout heading towards the base, drifting slower and slower towards it. A minute left of the Baron. Utapon with the ultimate coming back up. DFM, they are looking to absolutely crush through Sengoku in Game 2.
It turns out bullet time is about 0.1 seconds, because it doesn't need to be for any longer. It's supposed to be slow motion. He's 1v3. He's going to keep going. Remember, he's still got himself the likes of a revive from a chrono shift. Steel blows up the Gnar, and that is now 3. Wemba's dead. Jet respawns, but he's got to try and defend his base against this kind of onslaught. Zebby was looking for it there.
Yeah, the observers maybe slightly baited us in, as we say, like, oh, that's a very quick camera shift as he caught someone. Just caught the back end of some of those minions on the very end of that perfect execution. But DFM, again, making it look stylish. Maybe not the cleanest end to the game, but still... I love the flexibility this team has. So often we talk about Ebby, so often we talk about Steel, and a lot of the time Utapon has been left to the second or third part of the conversation about DFM. But this split, above all the others in the last few years, I'd say he's really one of the big focal point of this team in a lot of ways. Now, Ebby is having the split of his life in a lot of ways too. I mean, I think the last time I saw him in this kind of form, besides International, which is a bit of a different package for him, was Spring 2020. It's been a little while since he's been manhandling games to this extent, but Utapon has been playing whatever his team needs, and he's been picking up the carry role more and more often, putting his hand up and being counted for.
The only member to have died this game is Ebby, who traded 1 for 1 in a 1v5, and then nearly did the same in the bot lane. I feel like that's an okay trade that DFM are willing to take, because the rest of this team right now are deathless at least 3 items, 4 right now for Utapon. Although I take that back, actually, it's not quite there for Steel, who's got himself some winged winged plates, whatever it's called.
Woe is me, my Hecarim doesn't quite have
3
the
items.
luxury
Oh,
items.
No,
Yeah.
indeed, exactly. And at this point, it's so difficult. Steel gets sped up with the Shirelias, does get rooted in place, but it just doesn't take that much damage. The cage comes down, it'll force people away from this tower. They get a decent chunk onto Harp, but none of these are that important members, unfortunately.
Yeah, and you look at the Xayah with 3 items, you think, actually, that's maybe something that can punish DFM if they go too deep, but it's still so difficult.
There's Ebby, does get chunked pretty heavily there. The hostile taker comes through, and that's actually a really good handshake. They'll get the chrono shift out as well. It might force them away from taking that inhibitor turret. They'll throw down the event horizon, and there's no teleports coming through. 15 seconds until the Infernal Drake comes up. Every inhibitor is down.
Okay, well, actually, no, the bot lane inhibitor just survived.
Sorry, yes, it
So
did.
that's what they were just pushing forward for. But either way, I mean, DFM going to get themselves onto Soul Point. It's a bit of a late one. Dragons haven't really been the most important thing in this game. DFM getting so much just real financial gain just from killing people. Just running over the enemy team, getting a lot of gold into pocket, focusing on the heralds, blah, blah, blah. But it does mean that they don't have a potential game-ending soul at this point. The gold lead will probably replace that, however. DFM, I think, in the next minute, going to take Baron, look for that death push.
Oh, yes, they will. Force of Nature now, complete Hecarim. There's that luxury 3rd item. And they are in position with a stopwatch now on Udapon as well, alongside a Chrono Shift, alongside a Cleanse. It'll be up in about 3 seconds. You can see it on the UI on the right of your screen. It'll be up very shortly, at least, and very difficult to kill now. There's a Zhonya's on Veigar, and there's a Zhonya's on Akali.
Okay, but you know what's actually even more fun? Harp's actually gone for the support item, which you get post-level post-level 12 or whatever it is. Get the extra ward stone, effectively. I really appreciate that. A little bit of extra vision, doing the due diligence, and with that's an item I've always wanted to see a bit more of.
I think with the amount of golden inventory right now, it makes a lot of sense because you don't need to buy anything else right now. That vision control is exactly what is winning you this game, especially with a Baron coming up. That ability to control things as Ebby's
I think the fights are winning them the game.
And Steel goes in with an onslaught of shadows, will force Paz straight back into the cage. Ebby goes over, secures that one. Maybe he can look for a little bit more. Still has perfect execution to his name. Flash forward from Harp to get the Roop onto NT. Now he's getting charged back. May need to bail himself out. It's a decent use of the hostile taker.
Ebby!
Not enough, but Ebby goes forward. Primordial burst secures Jet. It is once alone against them all. He'll heartbreak over, but it's a bullet time that he finds to the face, and he is shredded, looking more like Swiss cheese than a human being. Nexus towers have fallen. DFM, it's another absolute whitewash. 2-0 in the series.
Diego shot through the heart and through the back by Utapon, and DFM really not letting up in game 2. Now, they still got to close it out, and again, this is the Juggernaut match. This is just a ticket to finals, and then the finals is your actual golden ticket to go even further beyond.